This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. And Shane, what do you say? Arizona is Territorial Cup champion. Unbelievable.
We have the nation's number 2 men's basketball team in early December, and here we're still talking football. Unfathomable a year ago, at the beginning of the season, or even a month ago, but here we are. 5 wins in November for the first time ever. 3 wins on the road for the first time ever in November. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I like I said last week, I didn't know what to expect. I felt like it was my duty to pick ASU to win, just because whenever I do the rare times I do pick Arizona, they lose. I didn't know what to expect. The first half of the game they dominated, and they were still down. And then reality kind of set it in the second half. It was remarkable. It's been a remarkable month, and I will say it again: savor these times, because you never know when they're going to come around again. We may not see another November like this again.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. I will just say this: in our wildest expectations, we never would have predicted 9-3, and many of you out there, unless you're a real homer, would not have predicted 9-3. Hell, I don't even know if the coaches would have picked 9-3 with this team. No. We said a couple of years ago, this is as good as it's going to get for Arizona football when the Wildcats went 10-3. And I may disagree now, because this team had less talent, a lot less talent than that team, and still found a way to get the same regular season record. Top it off with a bowl game win. Now, the teams that Arizona beat that year probably were a little bit better. The schedule was a little bit better. Nonetheless, 9-3 is fantastic. The number 18 team in the country. When you look at the college football playoff standings and you see Arizona 18 and Michigan 19, in my life, I never thought I would see that.
Yeah, just a few spots out of the potential college football playoff game. I don't know. But, and you mentioned the quality of opponent. I don't know if they're outside the top 12 for a reason, not just because of their record, because I don't think they're quite up at that level. But you think about it, they're a fumble recovery away from being 10-2 and being maybe switching spots with BYU, which maybe would still be slightly on the outside looking in. But the fact that they're just a few spots away from that next tier of teams that are in contention is, again, it was unfathomable a year ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, and 1 month ago. But here we are.
This was the first Arizona game that I had missed in Tempe since 1999. I did not go. I did not end up paying $250 a ticket. Those bandwagon ASU fans came out of the woodwork to watch their team play, and I bet that they wish that they had sold their tickets.
I don't know if we're in any position to talk about attendance at stadiums, though.
Well, but here's the thing. I mean, you're right. But they were. I mean, to jack up the prices that much, I've never seen anything like that. Nonetheless, going into the game was the least concerned I've been for an Arizona ASU game since I started going there in 2001. Normally that game gets me all, whatever. I was so relaxed thinking, you know what, this team's already won 8 games. Whatever happens, happens. Just don't get blown out. And they didn't listen. Arizona's offense did not play well. Arizona State's defense was fine, but Arizona's defense, Shane, was the real deal.
Yeah, and I will admit to back based on what you were just saying, I was a lot more nervous for the game 2 years ago than I was for this one, because it was a game they should have won 2 years ago. I mean, that would have put a really big damper on a great season if they had lost that game. This one, I going in tried to look at it like a bonus, even though it was a game. The more I thought about it, the more I thought Arizona really should win. But yeah, they beat a very good ASU team. I know they were down some very key players, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more as well. But to go in there back-to-back times in Tempe and hand ASU not only 2 years ago, it's the most points they've ever scored against ASU in that stadium, and then 2 years later, the next time they play, to hold them to the fewest points they'd ever held ASU to in that stadium is remarkable back-to-back performance.
Incredible. All right, let's get to it, Shane. We have a lot to talk about. Big show tonight. Victor Yates going to join us to talk some football. Bruce Pasco going to join us to talk some basketball. It's the double guest show, so here we go. It is Buy or Sell presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Shane, tell us about what Chris Gronkowski is offering here.
Well, by the way, did you see his brother tout the Wildcats win over ASU at the middle of Michigan Stadium before that game? But
yeah, I did see that. That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
Rob, who is a stakeholder in his brother's company, Ice Shaker, which they put out these 40-ounce beauties, these 40-ounce Legacy Series Ice Shakers, which I got in Wildcat Red. I got another one in blue. I'm going to show the blue one next time because I haven't featured that one in a while, but they're fantastic. Keep your drinks cold, keep your drinks hot, whatever you want. Definitely check them out.
All right, number one, Shane, you have written 2 books about the Arizona State rivalry. We talked about that. If you were to write a new rivalry book and create a chapter title based on the 2025 Territorial Cup game, what would you call it?
Well, the song that was featured in the outstanding Red Line recap video posted Monday on Arizona social media channels was Take Over Your Trap by a gentleman named Trentavious White, better known as Bankroll Fresh. And no, I'm not going to pretend like I knew any of that before I looked it up. But I think it's a perfect way to describe it. Take over your trap. ASU had lost one home game since the 2023 Territorial Cup game when Arizona beat them by 36 points. So Sun Devil Mountain America Stadium had become a trap for visiting teams, including Texas Tech this year. It was their only loss this year. And ASU just didn't lose there under Kenny Dillingham until they lost to Houston earlier this year. They didn't just go in and win. They embarrassed ASU in the second half. I mean, you look at the total yards and turnover margin. You just look at those 2 stats. The score probably should have been more lopsided than it was. But as we've learned, Arizona seems to be at its most comfortable when it's trailing at halftime. I challenged Arizona's SID, Brett Gleason, to figure out the last time, if it's ever happened, and I doubt it's ever happened, that Arizona has won 4 straight games that they've trailed at halftime. I can't imagine that's happened. So the ASU fans who want to note and have noted that it could have been different if Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson had been healthy, well, yes, of course. But if you're suggesting we put an asterisk next to the win for that reason, I'd love to talk to you about the 2015 game, the 2017 game, and a couple games during the Willie Tuatama era as well. So, they say no pity for the kitty, so I'm going to go ahead and say no sympathy for the devil there.
No, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. I'm going to go DDDD fence as my chapter title because I think would they have 4 turnovers or 5? I think it was 5.
5.
Was it 5? Yeah. DDDD fence. That game was all about defense. I thought both offenses weren't very good. Obviously ASU stunk with Sims. The Wildcats were not crisp at all in the first half. Arizona State's defense was very good. It was an ugly football game. Arizona has massive special teams problems with kicking the football. That's for another conversation. But, to get 6 field goals, I mean, Arizona should have won that game probably something like 34-10. Yeah. I mean, Arizona dominated that football game and blew so many opportunities. 23 points was a fraction of what they should have scored, but it was a truly impressive performance from the Wildcats, who've now won 3 or 4 in this series.
I will say, and I agree with you, but I will say that last drive where they ended with a touchdown that took a bunch of time off the clock, that was a statement drive, maybe the statement drive of the season. Yeah, where ASU's defense. I mean, ASU has got a really good defense, but they were tired, and Arizona was finally able to run the ball against them and then punch it in, which they weren't able to do most of the game. Their first possession, they get marched down the field and fumble, and then they're in ASU territory. Most possessions, just about every possession they had that game, they ended in ASU territory, and it was field goal misses and the turnover in the first half. But I don't know what else you can say about the defense, especially the secondary. It was a dream scenario for Traden Stukes and Dalton Johnson in particular, 2 guys who stuck it out at Arizona despite going through some very challenging times. Look, Noah Fifita did what he's done all year. No bad throws, like as in like passes that had a real chance of being picked off. He took what the defense gave him. ASU's got a legit defense, like I said. Outside of the Utah game, they hadn't allowed more than 24 points in a game this season, and that includes Friday's game. Of course, some missed field goals had something to do with that, but I think this game, it sort of felt like the road version of the 2008 game in Tucson, which is still my favorite of all time. Arizona was the better team, and somehow they were behind at halftime in that game, but reality set in during the second half. Injuries or not, holding the ASU to the fewest points they'd ever scored against U of A at that stadium. It's remarkable, and again, a total testament to the job that Danny Gonzalez has done.
Yeah, that was a great stat that you provided on X with that. Because I obviously you were the first one that I saw, and then other people were out there with it. But not very many people know more about the rivalry than you do, having written 2 books about it. Let me ask you number 2, Shane. What Arizona did this year was more impressive than the 2023 season by yourself?
In terms of personnel they had on the team, like I mentioned last week, there are probably no first-round picks on this team, at least as of now. And there might not be any day 2 picks either, even though I think there certainly could be and maybe deservedly should be. But
Genesis Smith may be the only one.
Yeah. I got full credit again to the coaching staff for finding not only great players, but experienced players in the transfer portal. I saw a stat that Arizona's collection of transfers, they're one of the 4 most experienced transfer groups in the country this year. Of course, the downside for that is it means you have a lot of one-and-dones on the team. But if that's what it takes to turn the program around and get more eyes on the program, so be it. But yeah, again, I think you talk about the star power on the 23 team with T-Mac. And I mean, T-Mac, Cowing, and McLaughlin on the same offense is almost unfair. And then the defense, I think I think Arizona's secondary this year was better, but Arizona's pass rush a couple of years ago was better, and they had more depth, and special teams as well. It was not an issue 2 years ago like it's been at times this year. So if you want to compare head to head, it's interesting. I think the 23 team was a bit better, which is why I think getting to 9 wins and having a chance to match the 23 team with 10 wins is even more impressive than what the 23 team did. Without taking anything away from what they did, I think it was, I would say, at least more unlikely with this group.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the talent level is significantly less. We've discussed that. I don't even think I'm not even sure it's all that close.
Yeah.
I think what Brent Brennan and his assistants did with this team, and this team just liked each other a lot.
Yeah.
This wasn't fool's gold where Noah Fifita came out of nowhere as he did in 2023. This was a team that, and albeit the schedule was favorable. You didn't have to play Texas Tech. You didn't have to play Utah. You got BYU at home. I mean, the tough games, the schedule really set up well for Arizona. You had Kansas State at home, and they turned out to be lousy. We expected more from Baylor. They turned out to be lousy.
Yeah.
Kansas wasn't very good. The Wildcats definitely had an easier schedule, but to go 9-3, even with that, was extremely impressive. Just thrilling. I mean, it was a thrill ride, and loved every part of it. Now, let's see if they can finish it off in the bowl game, which is seemingly likely to be the Holiday Bowl, based on all accounts. That the Holiday Bowl is most interested.
I've seen some projections for the Las Vegas Bowl as well. It'll probably be one of those two, but most likely Holiday.
Yeah, Holiday in San Diego, January 2nd. Fine with me. Yep. Vegas Bowl is December 31st, same as the Sun Bowl. So either one of those allows the extra practice time, which I'm all for. Number 3, Shane, the most important priority for Arizona football heading into the offseason is...
I'm going to bypass the obvious, which is to keep this coaching staff in place, because you've already talked about it ad nauseum, and certainly it is, trying to especially retaining both coordinators. But beyond that, I think it's going out and finding some new leaders on this team. Our friend Barrett Baker talked about after their 12-win season in '98, they retained some top talent, so the expectations were high the following year, but they lost a lot of team leaders. The guys who would lead the way in practice and the weight room, etc. Now Arizona will hopefully get back Noah Fifita, who's you say the leader on the team, but they're going to lose a lot of those guys, especially on defense. The guys who I think have led the way over the years, and I think they're going to be missed, not just in terms of what they do on the field, but just in terms of getting prepped for the week and getting the team motivated, physically, emotionally, everything. So I think it's imperative that this staff does a great job, not only of replacing that top talent, but getting vocal leaders who can take on that sort of player coach role on the team next season, because that's, I think, as big a key to repeating the success as anything else.
I think you got to build the line of scrimmage. You got to
Sure.
reaffirm that offensive line, get some players in the transfer portal. They're doing a great job with recruiting. Signing day is tomorrow, on Wednesday the 3rd, as we record this on Tuesday night. So the Wildcats have what, 6 4-star commits, which is fantastic. I mean, that's better than what Jed did.
I think they're currently ranked 4th in the Big 12 in recruiting rankings right now,
Phenomenal.
which is amazing. Yeah,
But
I take that every
agree.
year.
I'm not worried about Danny Gonzalez going anywhere. I'm more concerned about Daggy. I think there are opportunities for him to go elsewhere. We'll probably talk to Victor about that and get his take on that. But for me, it's about the line of scrimmage. That's where Arizona was so improved on the offensive line this year, and that is that's a key going forward. Now, obviously, kicker. I always tell you, Shane, if I was a coach, first position that I would recruit is kicker. First positions, kicker and a punter.
Yeah, you want to get into a little bit more. I think there should be a competition at least going into next season. I know we have Tyler Presume is still on the team, son of John Presume, who was a great kicker for U of A back in the day. Kicked the game-winning field goal at ASU in '95. He attempted one kick earlier this year and missed it, but look, Salgado Medina could still turn into a great kicker. I don't know if he's going to. I'm just saying. I always go back to Nick Folk's freshman year when he was awful, and he's still kicking in the NFL. So you never know. But yeah, there's no question about the leg. It's just the accuracy. I mean, the distance is never the problem, but he's about as accurate from 30 as he is from 50, and that's got to change. You don't expect a college. You're not going to get a Tyler Loop every year, but you got to get a little bit more consistency than what you got. And then as far as Seth Daggy, again, I said it last week. If Arizona could have him for one more year, I'll be thrilled, because I can't imagine it being much longer than that. He's destined for bigger and better things, whether he's an OC at a top 5, top 10 program, or he's a head coach at a group of 5 program and works his way up from there. That's what's going to happen. So if Arizona can find a way to retain him for at least one more year, that would be fantastic.
I'd agree with you. Speaking of, let's talk about Arizona. This is unbelievable. So Arizona was the only school who went undefeated combined in football, men's basketball, and women's basketball this month. Now, men's basketball, we know they had the tough schedule. Football, had some tough games to win 3 on the road. Women's basketball played all their games at home, didn't play any really good teams. Nonetheless, it's a phenomenal accomplishment that is extremely rare in college sports. By yourself, Shane, we will never see a November like this again in our school's history, at least in our lifetimes.
Well, and just to expand on that, we had a national champion triathlon team. The volleyball team got selected to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 7 years. So a lot of success. But as far as those 3 sports, I think the big question is, will the football team go undefeated in November again? Because the men's and women's basketball teams might manage that again at some point. I guess if Tommy Lloyd keeps scheduling the way he does, maybe not. But if it happens one more time in our lifetime, I think that I would take it, but not likely. Again, first time in ever that the football team has won 5 games in November, and part of that obviously is the way that the calendar is set up.
Sure,
but it was still remarkable. So yeah, you'd be hard pressed to think of a more successful month. Maybe more memorable months, because like if the men's basketball team wins a national championship, that's going to be remembered more than what happened this past November. But in terms of just collective Arizona athletics, I don't know if I could think of a more successful month or a comparable month. If you can think of one, you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, whatever, leave a comment. Let us know, because I can't think of one off the top of my head.
I don't think there is one. I think this is probably for combined sports. I think this is about as good as it gets. For Arizona, just phenomenal. I want to give a stat. I saw this for basketball, and I want to just, do you buy these stats, Shane? 20 of the last 20 national champions. So the last 20 years, national champions have been undefeated on Thanksgiving Day. 19 of the last 20 have had a top 21 Ken Palm offense and top 31 defense heading into March Madness. Now, as of now, there are 6 teams that fit that criteria: Duke, Michigan, Iowa State, Purdue, Louisville, and Arizona. So, of those 6 teams, Shane, is the national champion, in your opinion, as of today, among them?
Based on that criteria, yeah, probably. And it's certainly not, like, if you're asking to buy or sell, to put some stock into that, that's definitely not a bad sign. The funny thing about this team is, I think there's still a lot of room for improvement, which is not a bad thing at all. I think they're last I saw, they're number 6 in the net rankings, which just came out. They're number 8 or 9 in Ken Palm, despite it being ranked number 2 nationally. But they're finding ways to win as they figure it out. And they're finding ways to beat very good teams as they figure it out, which I think Jaden Bradley deserves the most credit for because he's been a phenomenal closer. They're probably going to have to find a way to win at least one game without Ivan Karchenkov, who hurt his ankle in the win over Norfolk over this past weekend. But yeah, barring additional injuries, I don't think there's a weakness on this team except maybe free throw shooting, which is becoming a bit of a concern. And we'll talk about more if we have to. Hopefully we don't. But I expect several guys to be better by March, and that hasn't always been the case with Arizona under Tommy Lloyd. And we're already seeing that from Mo Krivas. Some big improvement from the Florida game until now. So I think one of the big differences between this team and others that quote unquote peaked too soon is I don't know if this team has yet. I think that you have a lot of young guys who are going to be challenged throughout the season and will have no choice but to improve each week if they're going to keep winning as a result. And I think that's another area where the Big 12 schedule comes into play as well, because there's no opportunity to coast, especially in the last several weeks of that schedule, because it's absolutely brutal.
Let us hope. I do love this stat, though. The fact that the 20 of the last 20 national champs have been undefeated on Thanksgiving Day.
I would not have guessed that.
I would not have either. And I would have put the only other team that I would throw among those, a couple other teams that I would look at: Duke, Michigan, Iowa State, Purdue, Louisville, Arizona. I think Michigan State is really good. I think UConn is really good. I'm not buying Florida, but Florida made a nice comeback against Duke tonight. I think they fell short, but still, it was a nice comeback. As of now, UConn is losing to Kansas in the second half as we speak here, and Duke beat Florida by 1. Wow, they were up by a lot more in the first half.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, what Michigan did this past week is ridiculous.
To Gonzaga,
Gonzaga, and then Auburn as well, I believe, who comes to Tucson on Saturday. By 30 points, like 30. They beat 3 ranked teams or almost ranked teams by 30, 40, and 30. So, so I'm hoping a lot of these teams, they end up outside of Arizona's bracket, but then there's a lot of time between now and March. But yeah, it does go to show, I guess, and surprised me that apparently there's a lot more to having success this early in the season than I thought there was.
Apparently so. All right, Shane, there's a lot going on here. We talked about, it's been a hell of a show. We have, Victor Yates coming up. We have Bruce Pasco coming up. But before we get there, let us talk a few Shane's standouts. A lot going on. I wonder, is Nick Folk among that mix this week?
Oh, yeah. I forgot about Nick Folk, who kicked another
57-yarder in the win to beat Atlanta. I wanted to throw him in there for my Eric standouts of the week.
Yeah, Nick Folk. Well, then of course, another game, another touchdown for T-Mac as well. So, and a big win over the NFC leading Los Angeles Rams. So, a couple of U of A football just keeps rolling, both in a U of A uniform and a pro uniform. But again, want to mention and congratulate Coach Stubbs and the women's volleyball team. I pulled an Eric. The volleyball team on being selected to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 7 years. It's kind of hard to believe with the success that Frank Rubio had, but good to see him back there. They face South Dakota in what's essentially the Stanford region of the bracket on Friday. The top 16 seeds in volleyball are actually seeded, and then so Arizona plays 7 seed South Dakota. They won the NIVC last year, which is kind of like the NIT for volleyball. So they've already built on that this year. So congrats to Coach Stubbs on what's already been a very good season, and a very tough Big 12, which I think had more invites in volleyball than any other conference to the NCAAs. And then the women's basketball team, like you mentioned, Eric, they remain undefeated. They improved to 6-0 after beating Cal State Bakersfield. Noelani Cornfield finished with 22 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, 4 steals, and just 3 turnovers, and she played all 40 minutes. So we only get her for a year, unfortunately, but she had a heck of a game. She and Michaela Purdue have been phenomenal. So congrats to Coach Burke. Still hasn't never lost a game as Arizona's head coach. Again, like you said, the schedule has not been daunting. But you placed their over/under at 9.5 before the season started.
I did.
They're already more than half. No, they're already more than halfway there. So that's fantastic. So congrats to Coach Burke and Coach Stubbs, both former Wildcat Country guests and hopefully future Wildcat Country guests.
Yes, congratulations to both of those. As always, by the way, Wildcat Country is brought to you by Harrah's Auction Casino. And where can you get $15 in free slot play today? At Harrah's Auction Casino. Want more at Harrah's Auction? Just sign up for Caesars Rewards and $15 is yours. Plus earn up to $100 in additional free slot play. Caesars Rewards is the nation's #1 players card, and Harrah's Auction is the only local casino that has it. Use your $15 free slot play to earn perks at more than 50 destinations from coast to coast. That free slot play could earn you dinner in Vegas, hotel stays in New Orleans, and more. What are you waiting for? Sign up today. Take a spin with your $15 in free slot play and earn up to $100 more. Harrah's Auction Casino is your home for free slot play and more. Play for all. Coming up next, it is a two-pack of guests, a duo. We have Victor Yates and Bruce Pasco here on Wildcat Country.
All right, Wildcat fans, let's talk about crushing your workouts with the Ice Shaker 40-ounce Legend Series shaker bottle. It's made from kitchen-grade stainless steel, leak-proof, tough as nails, built-in straw, soft touch handle, and yeah, it keeps your drinks cold for a long time. I got mine in both Wildcat Red and Blue. Be sure to get yours at iceshaker.com.
Shane, coming off the win of all wins, a 9-3 season, and we are very fortunate to bring back our friend, one of the number 27s that we love on this program, Victor Yates, former Arizona letter winner on defense. Victor, I mean, you are one of the most entertaining social media Wildcat alums out there. We always appreciate it. Just your thoughts. Arizona's 9-3. I know you were as optimistic as anybody out there. You can't tell me that you thought this team would go 9-3 at the start of the year.
You know, I gotta give you a full report. I did not think that, and I was looking at a former my range, and I had us anywhere from 4 wins in a rough year to 8 wins is our ceiling, and I absolutely love it that this squad, this program, the coaches said, "Hey, man, we're not worried about your ceilings, brother. We in here. We do the playing. You do the watching."
You know, Victor, you've been very considerate to your ASU friends online. You've done like individual welfare checks on a lot of them, asking if they're good after, especially to the ones who doubted you after that you predicted Arizona was going to be better than ASU this year. You didn't forget a single one, I don't think. Is that a public service that you enjoy providing?
Hey, listen, it is my duty. It is my dutifully service for the people, and I will tell you, I've missed a few. So we were talking about this earlier, but I think on Championship Saturday, this Saturday, I will unpack the other ones and start to really go down the rabbit hole because there's so many of them. And there's a few that I really enjoy, the banter and them giving the acknowledgement of them having bad takes. But then you got some others who are like, well, what do you expect? You beat a team without blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. We got people who are injured too. We just didn't tout it. Like, if you knew our roster, you would know that we're not coming at you at full force either. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, like I said earlier in the show, it's like, okay, well, if you're going to talk about that, let's talk about 2017 when Khalil Tate was out the second half. Let's talk about 2015 when Arizona was down to its third string quarterback. Let's talk about a couple of the years that Louis Tuatama was there. So, look, obviously it could have gone a different way if Levitt and Tyson were healthy, but it is what it is. And they like to say no pity for the kitty. So I think the feeling's mutual. What do you enjoy most about watching, like, other than just watching U of A put a stomping on them in the second half? What did you enjoy most about watching that game?
Oh my goodness! Listen, and this isn't because I'm a defensive guy, but you realize in the game of football that if you want to be an elite team, which Arizona football is, being a top 20 ranked team in the nation out of over 130 programs or whatever that is, you will realize that your defense has to be an enforcer. And you watch what our defense did on Friday, and it gave us the perfect picture of what it looks like to enforce. Like, for my man to be on a block, to see the quarterback come, and with his free arm punch at the ball, and for the ball to come out, like, that's textbook great coaching in football, and put it into practice. But to me, that shows that you got guys who are aggressive. So many times when you watch mid to bad teams, what you'll watch on the defensive end is they're just catching they're catching the guys on offense. And what I mean by that is they're absorbing the contact. They're not making the contact. And so when you're forceful like that on defense, it creates opportunities for turnovers. And it really does. It makes people think twice about when they're running the football. Like, hey, I got to watch out for number 42. He's knocking people out. And so I think that's probably the proudest point for me to watch our team go and say, hey, we're a team that creates turnovers, which obviously makes it a shorter field and easier for our offense to get going.
Quick follow-up on that. Is this the best secondary you've ever seen Arizona football have? Because I can't remember. I mean, I don't remember specifics as far back as I'm sure you do, but this is the best I can remember.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like when I was playing, I feel like we might have had they're definitely up there, and I say that because I don't want to say that I'm off the top of my head I could think of all of our best secondaries because there's a nuance in this when I say it of secondaries typically are also tied to their front seven, and if you're getting pressure with the front four, then maybe your secondary looks a little bit better than they actually are.
Yeah,
and I will say with this secondary, knowing what we were doing with our front four, these guys were balling out on the back end, right? Like when you think about that Kansas game and one-on-one coverage on the corner route for basically like that puts Kansas in the lead and gets the PBU, like that's elite coverage. So when you say that, I'm like, yes, they're definitely in the conversation. We've got some ballers back there.
And I would take it another level, Victor. Is this Arizona's best defense that you can remember since at least your time playing? And I would say probably dating back to the Dick Tomey days when they made the Holiday Bowl in '98. I can't think of a better overall unit that we've seen even close. Maybe one of the Stoops units, the one with Mark Stoops when you were there, but it's hard for me to think of a better unit. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I listen. Yes. What I would be interested to see when you say whole unit is, I would be interested to see who is our sack leader from that front four this year, because I feel like that's something that at times, if you're not bringing it, then maybe you're not getting the pressure like you would want. Because when you're getting it with those front four, I think that's even more devastating. So to your point, though, this defense is suffocating, and to give them credit, I'm looking at the last like 4 games, and I'm like, dude, the adjustments that they make is absolutely insane. Like the way that they impose their will on offenses is absolutely insane. Like, so
yeah, you're right. No, I mean that's it. But the other thing is this team, and we talked about this a few weeks ago after the Cincinnati game. They really look like they enjoy playing together. And that's why, I'm going to feel confident. I know Brent Brennan has never won a bowl game, but I'm going to feel confident in picking Arizona to beat whatever ACC opponent likely in the Holiday Bowl, because this team looks like they really enjoy playing together. Did you ever feel that way with any of the Arizona units that you played with, where you guys you could tell you guys were, a tighter bond than maybe other teams that you played on?
Yeah, I would say that's more hard to describe because, and here's what's unique about this team. When you're winning, the bond can feel really tight because what it is it's a belief in the execution and your belief in your teammates, right? Of like, hey, everybody's making plays. The coach is making plays, putting us in the right position. We're all executing, and because we're all executing, the end result is we're stacking W's. Like that's a contagious, and I feel like that's a contagious trait to have. But as I look at it, I'm like, dude, one of the teams that immediately comes to my mind is that 2008 team that ended up being Vegas Bowl champions, that ended a 10-year drought, and going, hey, figuring out a way to win bowl games is critically important. And when you look at this team that Arizona has, that's what they've done. And to their credit, not with the best special teams showing in terms of field goals. Like I talk about even this past Saturday or Friday of looking at Coach Brennan and having the faith in his kicker, even though as a fan base we go, because I had some people who were ASU fans who didn't know about a kicker before we kicked, and this isn't a shot and an attack at the kicker by any means, but just speaking history, I go, yeah, man, I mean, if our kicker goes 50%, we're pretty solid. Like, that's my expectations right now. And they said, what? And so we missed the first one. I said, hey, man, I mean, if you watch the Cincinnati game, I'm like, hey, man, you just know. They're like, hey, and I'm like, and it was cool to see Brennan keep his trust in him and the kicker to come through when we needed him the most. But you look at those points and you go, those are the types of things that actually give you more of a cushion. So with this team, yes, they are a very special team. And I would say if you want to go like crazy like outlooks, you could go, this is the best team in Arizona football history based on projections of where they should
Yes,
be.
I agree.
Hands down.
100%. Yep.
Like, we don't have that many teams that have been able to win 9 games in the history of Arizona. Yeah. I think when I last checked, it might have been, let me guess a high number and say 11 teams, but I don't even think that. So when you're talking about that being an elite company of 9 and where they were projected to be at, that's all of their effort, but it's also all of the coaching effort. And that's the nuance of, like, when you talk about Gonzalez, him and his dudes are scheming things up that are working with the personnel that they got. And that's where I really just tip my hat and go, dude, you guys have figured this out.
I posted this question on X, Victor, and I want to get your take. A matchup between 2023 Arizona and 2025 Arizona. How would that go? My prediction is I think that the 23 team might win by a touchdown. I think they have a little more offensive firepower, bit better pass rush, better on special teams too, as some other people pointed out in response to it. How do you think that fantasy matchup would go?
Yeah, yeah, it's funny you say that. I'm trying to think of that. Well, that's okay. That's a good one. Yeah, because you got to give the nod to the special teams, to the 2023, obviously, in all of their phases of, like, hey, that's a more stout program. The thing that I think of is the tailbacks in 2023. That's the other edge I give them. Yeah. Like, dude, you're talking about 3 dudes who could go.
Jonah Coleman, and Michael Wiley, DJ Williams are all.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that's why I'm like, to your point, I'm like, yes, I'm giving the nod to 2023, but I would say, to your point, I think that this program would for sure find a way to keep it in a one-score game. Because the other thing that we don't want to forget about is that tight end who was a bad man in 2023. Yeah. And I'm like, him and T-Mac, you kind of got to pick one that you want to zone into.
Well, and Jacob Cowing too. I mean, he's like, pick your poison with those 3 guys. It was just, he had, Fita had so many weapons. It was ridiculous.
Yes.
All right, the last question for you, Victor. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording. Obviously, I think the big question, or the biggest question going into the offseason, is, can Arizona retain this coaching staff? I don't think Brett Brennan's going anywhere, but keeping coordinators after you have a big year like this can be especially tricky. How do you predict that that's going to play out in the offseason?
It's great, man. Listen, my prediction is one of those coordinators, one of the 2 coordinators is gone, and I say 2 because we're just talking offense and defense in terms of commodities. And you've got a guy who was a former head coach with G, and you got a guy who's a young guy who came in and just he alternated the course of Arizona offensive football in one season.
Second straight year he's done that. Did it with Marshall last year, did it with Arizona this year. Yeah.
Yes, and to me, the problem with that is, as an alum, is one, I never take things personally, because I think the people who put the time, energy, and effort and hours are worth their wage. So I'm like, you really do have to unload the bring truck to your coordinators. And at some point that doesn't make sense when you start approaching the the totals that you're paying your head coach, maybe, or putting a bind on it. But I would say those dudes need raises. Like, it's clear as day they need raises, and it's well deserved. Yeah. They did more with less than arguably anyone else in the country. Yeah. And that's what's going to happen, to your point, with these coordinators. And my guess is everyone in the country is going to seek their services at a higher rate to say, hey, if you can do what you did in Arizona at X, we will pay you more for that. And that's where, like, you look at the guy at, and I won't mention his name, but you look at the new head coach of Ole Miss, right? He's looking for some help. He's going to have, like, there's people that the ramifications of college football changing. And that means that these coordinators who did an amazing job at Arizona now are going to have to either get compensated heavily so that they stay, or someone else is going to pay them more, and then we're going to have to figure that out. And I will say to the fan base, you just need to know that hiring good coordinators is an extremely hard thing to do. It's not easy. Like, it is not easy. And we are the benefactors of a great hiring of an offensive coordinator. And last year, we felt the ramifications of hiring a bad offensive coordinator. And we couldn't get out of it. Even when the defense was playing well. In the midst of it, like, you couldn't appreciate what the defense even trying to do last year because of how bad the offense was. So,
well, and I think the model here too, Victor, is you look at what Brent Brennan did. He went to a team that was successful last year, won a conference title, won the Sun Belt Championship in Marshall. Their head coach was moving on to another school at Southern Miss, and he went and grabbed the offensive coordinator. And it was a Mike Leach disciple. So the type of offense that you want to run. Like, it seems like a formula that's repeatable. Now, to me, I would be concerned about Oregon opening up because, with Will Stein going to Kentucky. I could see Oregon plucking Seth Doege.
Yeah,
that one would be right. But if you're Seth Doege, and Justin Spears made this point, to me earlier today, is he wants to work with Noah Fafita for another year. Now, I want to ask you one thing that Justin asked me on Tucson radio this morning. Is Noah Fafita, assuming he stays another year at Arizona, is he the unquestionably greatest quarterback in Wildcats history?
I'm gonna give you a spoiler alert. He already is.
Shane, would you agree?
But listen. If they, and you could just put the if on, because I understand we've got another game to play, but you have 2 9-win seasons under your belt. Mm-hmm. Name me another quarterback that has led the program. And here's the deal. One year of those, obviously, he had the backtrack, but we all know the backtrack obviously wasn't because of him.
No.
The coordinating. And so you get him with the right coordinator, and he shows he can dice anything up if you just put him in position to do what he does, which is he's a hell of a thrower, primarily outside of the pocket. Like, that guy can throw like nobody's business. He throws it on the missile. So to your point, I think he's already that, but with another year underneath his belt, most certainly.
Shane, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if you're talking quantity or quality, like I was just thinking earlier today, like, people think Tom Brady's the best quarterback of all time. In terms of quantity, in terms of accomplishments and his numbers and everything he's racked up, absolutely. In terms of quality, I think it's fair to compare him with a guy like Joe Montana, who I would say is the best of all time. In college football level, like Noah Fafita, in terms of quantity, absolutely. I think he's already there, very close to it. Quality, I think another year would certainly solidify that. I mean, the guy's been consistent, and I said my favorite thing about him is that he makes, especially this year, he makes very few mistakes. Like, if he makes an incomplete pass, it's an incomplete pass that only his receiver had a chance to catch. Yeah. So I think he's very smart. So, like, the numbers aren't as wowing, but I think he is one of the most cerebral quarterbacks that Arizona's had. Nick Foles, I think, would definitely be up there as well. But I think put it this way, another year would definitely solidify it for me. But in terms of that quantity, I think you could argue he already is.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a great take.
74 total touchdowns. You figure, and that's including 4 rushing. Assuming he stays another year, 100 touchdowns. I'm not sure in this day and age that will be broken in our lifetimes at Arizona.
Yeah,
I mean, somebody who's staying around 4 years, you rarely see. I mean, Victor, we've talked about it, and if you had the ability to move around in your playing days like players do now, would you have stuck it around at Arizona for 4 years? Probably not.
It's funny that you brought that up, because I say it all the time man, in this day and age, it's hard to stay with a school because you're being given opportunities to financially be compensated at a higher level, which means you just depart, but it also takes away from the bond with said school. Like, to your point, you got some guys who they've literally went to a different school each year. I'm like, and listen, if it gives you the opportunities to accomplish what you want to accomplish, more power to you. But 20 years from now, when you talk about reunions, when you talk about guys, like, I'm like, I am in the group that is like 20 years out for playing college football almost, and I'm still in a group chat with guys that I played with 14 years ago. We're talking about stuff literally today in a group chat of like 25 guys, right? And so I'm laughing at that because I'm going, dude, certainly if you don't have those bonds, then when you say, hey, what about this guy? They're like, oh no, no. So what he's doing is unheard of for sure. And to your point, to stay 4 years, man, it's a hard thing to do. It's gonna be like, to your point, it reminds me of like baseball. If you're really good, junior year, you'll depart and you'll go pro. Like that's what's going to end up happening when someone's in that caliber.
Last question, and I hate to bring this up, but you have to. This tonight is the 15th anniversary of Arizona ASU in 2010. That was your senior day, I believe. Is that correct?
That is.
Should Mike Stoops have gone for two in overtime? I mean, knowing what we know now, it's one thing. Double overtime, should Mike Stoops have gone for two, or were you okay with the extra point in that scenario?
You know what? I'm okay with the extra point because you just go in your mind as a coach, you go, dude, put it through the uprights and we're out of here. Like that's so simple. And knowing Mike with the 2-point conversion, that would have been even more crazy because we weren't the type of team to have a surefire 2-point conversion, especially back then. You know how nowadays, I feel like nowadays in today's day and age with offenses, everyone has one that they're like, okay, if stuff gets crazy, here's my Boise State play against Oklahoma, Statue of Liberty, it's going to get us in the end zone. We for sure did not have that. So I feel like I would have been more distraught watching a guy get tackled on the 2-yard line or watching the ball get knocked down than
to be fair, Victor, Jetfish still doesn't have that, but you know what? One thing about the 2010 game is if Arizona makes the first PAT, they wins the game in the fourth quarter. That is kind of Nick Foles' defining moment at Arizona because that was a fantastic last-minute drive he led Arizona on. It ended with a touchdown to David Douglas, who I think he was his roommate.
Yep,
yeah, and of course, no one remembers that now. But it would have been his third game-winning drive of the season, and it's most memorable if they had won that game. But of course, that's a footnote in history because of what happened next. And I actually talked to Alex and Dejas about the kick years later for my book, and he said he made like a cardinal sin among kickers for that last extra point, and he actually changed up some sort of cadence or something. I don't know exactly what it was, but he changed up his technique going into that kick, and that's this. Like the first one was a legitimately good block by James Brooks. The second one, he just didn't get high enough. So
yeah, and to your point, the second one, people don't know this, but it went off the lineman's head first.
Yep.
And
And
that lineman, crazy enough story, that was his last football game. Why? Because he got a concussion.
Yep.
I mean, he had concussions in high school. And this was a guy who had NFL potential, Von Dotsey, who had the assignment in the Holiday Bowl for blocking Ndamukong Suh, he held his own.
Gosh.
He was a guy who held his own against Ndamukong Suh, and I say held his own, like not defeated him, but had good enough productivity where they're looking at this guy to go to the NFL, and that back of the head shot was the end of his football career.
Oh,
so
wow! I had no idea. That's crazy.
That's a crazy way to end it in the Territorial Cup.
I hate to bring that up, but I was thinking about it because it's the only game that I've ever left the stadium and wanted to cry. I mean, that was the sickest 2.5-hour drive home that I ever have had in going to 20 plus years of Arizona football games. I think we can all agree, probably one of the most painful games of all time.
And on that note, Victor, thanks so much for joining us.
We wanted to get a first-person account of or at least I did.
Hey, listen, to be fair with what you're saying, this is why I say I wouldn't go for two. The expectation is, hey, man, put it through the damn uprights and we're out. It's like,
but you got to play another overtime. That's why I'm going for two every single time that I can, because I once talked to, and I don't mean to go on long here, but talked to a guy that I worked with who played on the 1983 Nebraska team. And you'd say, well, what's the significance of that? Well, in the Orange Bowl, they were down 31-30 after scoring a touchdown to Miami. The national championship was on the line, and Tom Osborne went for two. And they didn't get it. So I asked the guy years later, I said, did anyone on the team get upset at Osborne? He said, not one. They all supported that he took a chance to win the national title instead of just tie. Because there was no overtime.
See, for me, the 2010 game that decision didn't bother me as much as 2009 against Oregon, because at that point, Jeremiah Masoli and LaMichael James and LeGarrette Blount were unstoppable, and they had a chance, one play, 3 yards to win the game and not let them back on the field. That's when
both of them, Shane, both of them.
I feel more strongly about that one.
Yeah. The Oregon one, I'm with you on that, because you could. If you believe in momentum, you could feel the momentum shifting.
Yeah.
So you go, hey, we're going to put these dudes away. And to your point about the ASU, the only reason why I like the extra point is because you're at home and you're like, hey, we will find a way to win this. And it actually ended up being the other way.
Well, sorry to get depressing there, but it's always great to talk to you, Victor. He's one of the best. Victor Yates. Yeah.
2-2 versus the Sun Devils. Because we don't count the redshirt freshman year because we were ineligible to play then because it's a redshirt freshman year. So 2-2 instead of any other record. So we'll take it.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Shane, after all the good things we've had with football, one thing that's kind of being overlooked, I guess a little bit right now, is the basketball team, which is undefeated. And that's something that I would have predicted by any means, for them to go in and beat Florida, UCLA, and UConn. There's no way. None of us would have predicted that. Wait a second. Maybe one guy would have, but he won't necessarily tell us the truth. The great Bruce Pasco, Ace reporter from the Arizona Daily Star. Bruce, come on. There's no way. Honestly, you would not have picked Arizona to be undefeated at the end of November, would you?
No, but I thought it was possible because, I mean, I would have said probably they're going to lose one of them. And I thought I thought the game at UConn would be probably the one. But I did think they could beat Florida, and I did think they could beat UCLA. And the reason why is because they're really good out of the gate under Tommy Lloyd. I think it looked like last year was kind of a one-off, but he's been here 5 Novembers, and they've been undefeated in 4 of them. And every time they've pulled out wins during that month that people did not expect. And that's, they have it together. And I think this year, unlike last year, guys are fitting into the roles a little bit better. They don't have that weird injury situation where Krivas was kind of back, but he wasn't fully back. And then they weren't sure what to do with Carter Bryant. And, whereas this year everyone fit into roles, and, credit to these guys, they pulled 2 starters on the bench, and those guys seem to be, dealing with it all right. And, that doesn't happen too easily sometimes.
Bruce, thanks for joining us as always. It's kind of crazy. We're talking about the number 2 basketball team in the country, and yet football is still the big talker in Tucson. That tells you how crazy times are right now and how good things are going. And we learn to enjoy those things for as long as they last, because they're always fleeting. Before we get into this team a little bit more, I just want to talk about Ivan Karchenkov's ankle injury. I know we don't know a lot about it. Just my guess is he'll probably miss the Auburn game if it's a sprain, which he didn't come back to the game, so I'm guessing it's at least that. How do you think that would factor in if he has to miss a couple games?
Well, probably this is as good a time as any if you're going to have to miss a couple weeks, because they only have the 2 games. They're every game does count in your tournament resume, but it's not Big 12 yet. He's gotten a chance to kind of get his feet wet, and he's played kind of like a guy who does have a fair amount of experience, even for a freshman. Yeah. I think it's minimal. The question is it one of those high sprains or a really significant sprain that kind of hobbles them for 3 or 4 weeks, and then you get into the Big 12 play, and that could be a little dicey. And then when you're gone that long, of course, then it forces the rotation to adjust without you. And then when you finally do come back, it has to rotate. You have to adjust again, and that can be difficult. But if it's just a 1 or 2 game thing, it might be a minimal deal. I think obviously playing Alabama at Birmingham is going to be tough for them anyway, with or without Karchenkov, and Auburn at home. They're playing better than I would have expected, being as the the coaching change there. So, but they should be able to handle them at home, you would think.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that more a little bit in just a minute. But I feel like this team, it's an interesting spot because yes, they've overachieved. I think from my perspective, from most fans' perspectives, they're undefeated, number two in the country, and yet I still think they haven't really reached their full potential. I think they have a lot of young guys who are like you said, they're finding their roles. But a guy like Braden Burries, I feel like we're just starting to maybe see him emerge a little bit. He's gotten foul trouble in a couple of big games, so we haven't seen a lot of him. Dwayne Aristo still getting his footing after missing a lot of time. Same thing with Krivas. Karchenkov is still getting you. I still think that because I think a lot of UVA fans, that we've seen this before. They look great in November and then they crash out in March. I feel like maybe this team's built a little differently because I think they're going to improve because they have so many young guys who are only going to get better between now and the end of the season. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, because you've seen that kind of with every one of Tommy Lloyd's teams. They've started out hot, except last year, they actually, made something of it. But usually they kind of level off. Yeah, or maybe even take a little bit of a dip. I think that one year when they lost to Princeton, and that was partly injury related. But
Yeah.
you're right. This is a team that has upside, and I've always thought it has probably as much ceiling, maybe more than any of his teams, but also potentially lower floor because he's never had a team where they've had to rely on four freshmen that heavily in the rotation, and especially three of them as starters, and it's a different ask from a guys who haven't played at this level a lot. But as we know, that they're not all real, your everyday freshmen. I mean, Karchenkov played on the highest level in Germany's pro league last year. And Cole Pete's just been all over the world winning, FIBA, and obviously in the state here, he's known for winning four titles, and so he's got it in him, and we've seen that. We saw it right away against Florida, and then I think Burry's, he's got a lot of potential, but maybe hasn't had some of those other experiences, and it's possible that he's just getting used to a higher level because you've seen him when he's played these mid to low major teams, he has been dominant at times, but against the bigger teams, it's really been tough. You have foul trouble, shooting, ball handling, all that's been a struggle. So we'll see. Yeah, I think he's really the kind of one of the keys to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Bruce, what has surprised you or who has surprised you the most about this year's team?
Um, well, I don't know if I would say any individual as much as, um, I mean, as much as just how well, especially the post has kind of come together. Because I thought it might be really tricky to see Owaka and Krivas together. I didn't think at times they played that well together. I didn't know if Owaka would accept being a reserve. I mean, he was honorable mention all Big 12, and then to have him come off the bench, it's like, wait, what, that could cause a lot of problems. But he's a different kind of guy who seems to be taking that pretty well. So I guess that's the thing that struck me is how well that dynamic has worked so far. Not only them playing together, but Owaka accepting the role. He's been super efficient in the time when he's on the floor. I just crunched some numbers today. I was playing around with it. I mean, he was literally averaging 15.8 rebounds per 40 minutes. He just doesn't get that many minutes, or whatever. And so that's it. I think the freshman to me, I think Burry's maybe a little surprised on the disappointing side just because of what I've seen of him. And then even the red blue game, he just looked like he had it. He had that competitive drive in him, and ability to get to the basket. I think Pete's as advertised. Karchenkov's kind of as advertised, really, if you really looked into what he did in Europe. And Aristode also, really a high potential 3-and-D guy, but going to take a while, especially after he missed last year. And we're seeing all of that.
When we had you on, I think it was October, and I said, "What's the ceiling for this team?" You said Final Four, right there. Have your expectations, would you say, have changed in November? Would you say this team is legitimately, I know they're ranked second, they're legitimately a national championship contender, or let's hold our horses, start with the Final Four and go from there?
Gosh, yeah. I mean, they're always kind of in that conversation where they always could be considered a Final Four contender. I think again because they do have a higher ceiling. Yeah, I think you got to start there, but To say they could win it all, yeah, they might be one of those. What do they figure? Usually by the whatever it is around the 1st of February, you can tell the top 8 teams in the efficiency ratings or whatever it is at that point. One of them is going to win it probably, and they could be in that ballpark. But it's I think it'll be it's just be interesting. There are a lot of questions about how well those freshmen are going to develop. But you could imagine if, like we're talking about Braden Burries, if he develops into a an all freshman type of player, watch out really, because then they would have so many pieces that it would be really something. So this could be a really interesting team to watch as the season goes on, because you always see freshmen always develop, and here we are in November, and a couple of them already look like they're really producing at a high level, and so if the rest of them get going, that could be. I mean, yeah. Other than that.
Uh, Looking ahead to the Auburn game, kind of a whirlwind for Auburn with Bruce Pearl stepping down before the season started. They beat St. John's and then got clobbered before that got clobbered by Michigan, like everyone did this past week. Michigan's on a freaking roll right now.
Yeah.
Keyshawn Hall's been great for Auburn as a transfer, I think, from UCF. How do you think the Wildcats match up, regardless of Karchenkov at the moment? I'm going to follow up on that, but how do you think they match up with Auburn?
I think it's pretty good. I mean, they're kind of an aggressive team. They run kind of a mid-level pace, but they're pretty good offensively. I don't think their size is gonna, they're a little bit smaller. They have some size, but Arizona can match up with them there. I think the interesting matchup's going to be Pettiford and Jaden Bradley. I mean, those are two of the best point guards in the country, and and to see how that plays out will be interesting. And I think the thing that strikes me as interesting is they pretty much have a whole new team, which isn't unusual in this day and age, except for Pettiford. I think he's like the only key guy coming back. And then they got a new coach as of whatever it was, late September or whatever, when Bruce Pearl decided to retire. And granted, Stephen Pearl's his son, and he's got the same philosophies and all that, but that's a lot to just have all that transition going on. And so, certainly Arizona's got a big edge there. They have, a lot of key guys back, and the stable staff and all that kind of stuff. The game's going to be at McHale and all that. So, Arizona should be able to handle this one.
If Karchenkov can't play, and my guess is at this point, just completely uneducated, my guess is he probably won't play this weekend. I'm wondering if Tommy Lloyd will stick with just that rotation and just try to play those 7 guys if he can, because I think that's what he's done in the past. If he can get away with it, to avoiding foul trouble or any additional injuries, if he can just get away with playing those 7 guys, he'll probably do that. Maybe a sprinkling of Evan Nelson or even C.D. Gay if they get into foul trouble. But that's kind of what I'm expecting going into the game. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's true. In fact, if you look I actually have like stats of the 3 big games, and you've seen a lot of this just anecdotally, just watching those 3 games, I'm sure. But basically, Aristo barely even, I think he averaged 8 minutes in those games. Wasn't a huge factor, just kind of sprinkled in. So you take, essentially, it's a heavy seven player rotation, and that wouldn't change. It just will mean though that both I think Del Orso and Karchenkov will get. I mean, Del Orso and Aristo get a lot more minutes, and yeah, it's possible. Maybe he throws a Nelson in there. This might be a good opportunity to do that, being as it's a home game, and Tommy Lloyd has indicated he wanted to play Nelson more because, but he hasn't, because he's trying to get all the 4 freshmen together. And I think especially Burries, he's trying to give them more experience and as many minutes as possible. But I think he's got to know that he might also need Evan Nelson down the road. I mean, there were a couple of times last year where Conrad Martinez played a little teeny role off the bench. I remember when they were really bad at Iowa State, Martinez went in there and actually played pretty good. And so, he probably needs to, keep Nelson as a ninth guy, kind of keep him warm, as Tommy likes to say with the baseball cliches, kind of like keep him warm in the bullpen kind of thing. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 7 or 8 minutes out there on Saturday as well.
Last question for you, and I'll let Eric finish. Tommy Lloyd, I know he likes to give you a hard time in the press conferences. Like he'll call you out by name and just like say Bruce. Like I don't know how many times I've heard that. Just
Yeah.
like
I
like
can be.
what have you gotten more of an like have you been able to talk to him like away from the press conferences, just get any more insight into his personality? Because he seems like he's a pretty obviously very low key guy, just stays off social media. But I feel like sometimes he comes off as a nice guy in press conferences, and sometimes he comes off as very impatient.
Yeah, it's both. I mean, no, he is. Well, the one thing is he's genuine. He is what he
Yeah.
is. In fact, I remember his dad told me that, like when he first came here, I did a profile on him, and his dad said, "What you see is what you get," and he's right. Like, and sometimes he's in a bad mood. In fact, we talk about that after the press conferences a lot of times. Like, what got into him tonight, or whatever, because they played well or whatever. Maybe it was some whatever.
Well, he opens every press conference with like, "Okay, guys, let's get this over with." And
Yeah, well, I think it's one of these things where, and I think Sean Miller was a little like this too. I don't think they love doing press conferences or whatever. Just but I don't think he minds us other than, sometimes I'll ask an annoying question or a question he doesn't want to really talk about, or maybe I'll ask it in a weird fashion, and I do sometimes do that, whatever. But he knows, I think he knows most of us are doing our jobs, and I think he's fine with that. And I think it's funny because some people do come up to me and they occasionally see the videos and they'll say, "Well, he must hate you," or "He doesn't like you," or "What's up with that?" or "What's up with him?" And I'm like, "No, he's just joking around." And a lot of times if you are teasing you, sometimes that can be a sign that, that, I don't, that's not, it's just, trying to have a little fun. I think he's trying to have a little fun with it. I think when he's away from the press conference, you get a little more of that. But it's limited access wise, especially during the season, because he's
yeah.
so busy and that everything's structured and it's hard to catch him out outside of a press conference. But I do get a chance occasionally, and, so I think that helps too. He knows where I'm coming from and things like that. And I'm also very lucky that I get to go everywhere they go. So there are a lot of times, especially on the road or when they went to Israel a couple of years ago, where I'm just talking to him one on one, just, and then you can have a regular conversation, which
Right.
is helpful.
Let's play a ranking game. Normally, I ask you a crazy question to end the interview, but this is going to be fun. Of all the Arizona head coaches that you have covered, so let's go Lute, Russ Pennell, Kevin O'Neill, Russ Pennell, Sean Miller, Tommy Lloyd. Let's rank them from
You're making
favorite
me
press.
feel old, Eric.
Listen, you've been on the beat
Yeah,
for a long time.
I know.
Rank them from your favorite press conferences to cover to not as entertaining at the top. And no offense to Tommy Lloyd here, but just your favorite. What? Just rank them in terms of most entertaining soundbite to least, if you can.
Wow, I'd say probably Kevin O'Neill probably would be the top as far as sound bites. And I think Miller would be the most press conference, the most that you get out of it, especially when he's upset about something, because he was really good. He didn't waste any words. Like he said, he was a very skilled communicator, still is, obviously. And like I go through, he'd have an 18-minute press conference, and I go through it for an hour and a half. Every single word he said meant something, So that, as a journalist, that's significant to, and he wouldn't shy away from a lot of stuff, especially on the court. I mean, obviously the off the court stuff is a different story sometimes,
Yeah.
but if it was a matter of guys weren't playing well or some weird situation, he would tell you what's going on, and so those two guys up there, and I think Tommy Lloyd's probably the top as far as just being approachable, and as I said, genuine. He may skirt around issues. A lot of times he'll say, I don't know, or we're not worried about that or whatever, when there's probably more going on than the scene. But generally, it's he's generally easy to work with, and ask questions to, is even if you don't like, even if he doesn't like it or want to answer it or whatever, like, he's not going to throw knives at you for asking the question or whatever.
What was Lute like in a press conference to you?
Well, I mean, that's kind of tricky because that was a weird time. Like, towards the end, I covered towards the end of when he was coaching,
And I'll just mention real quick, I was in a couple when I was at the Daily
yeah,
Wildcat, way back in 03, 04. And yeah, it's a very, it felt like a very formal process. And just as a student, it was very intimidating being around, like the king of Tucson like that.
yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Yeah, he just carried himself differently, and he was pretty good about telling you what was going on with the players, but sometimes could be difficult when you were asking questions that, might challenge certain situations or whatever. And yeah, so it was, it was a little of both. I'd say he's kind of in the middle as far as that, and that's not unusual. I mean, when you think about coaches like they're kind of like they got their own fiefdoms or whatever. And this applies to everybody. I mean, but the media is the one little thing that they can't control. And, like nobody's going to say to Lute Olson, hey, it was something really negative because they're just not. But we might ask about it. And so, I think it's normal for coaches to kind of, sometimes handle that a little differently or whatever. And, it's a tricky thing. I mean, I've seen it from a number of coaches, So, but generally, yeah, I mean, and there's nothing, I mean, he also was, in a way, fairly genuine and, come from humble roots, and he had all that personality in him, which made him, easy to approach that way too. And sometimes if you could get him one-on-one, he was actually, pretty nice and pretty easy to talk to. It's just those times didn't happen that often.
Yeah.
So last one for you. If you were to set an over-under, and we're not doing betting here, but if you were to put an over-under at the number of losses Arizona has in the regular season, not counting the Big 12 tournament, not counting the NCAA tournament, what would you put the over-under at? I would put the line right now, just mine, is 7.5. That'd be
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I mean, I mean, if this was a month ago, I would have said something like 10.
right.
But now you have to adjust downward and you're thinking, you know, yeah, figure, say even if they lost to Alabama and then they lose maybe six in the Big 12,
Yeah,
the
6 or 7.
schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I would actually 7.5. I might even be tempted to go a little under that. The way they're going and with the upside they have. But
And yeah,
the
and the
X
cra
factor you never know about, of course, about injuries.
right.
And is something like Korchenkov going to get worse? Could something else happen? But as of
Yeah.
right now, boy, yeah, I mean,
But 6 or 7
8.
losses, and you still could be talking about a 1 seed considering their schedule. So
You could, yeah,
yeah.
they're definitely on that. They're on that thing. Yeah, I mean, it could be, yeah, and then all the good, things could happen as far as where they get treated in the tournament and so forth. Yeah.
Give me a 1 or 2 seed in the West. Bruce Pasco will be happy, and we'll all be happy. Less travel for you, Bruce, till the Final Four. Then we can talk about it then. Always great having you on. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you, I'm sure, as the season goes along.
Yeah. All right. Glad to be here. Thanks, guys.
Well, Shane, last week I hit my upset special. I hit my Arizona game. So that's 2 points each, and I still lost ground to you in our picks. You are now up by 9 on me on the season. I'm about ready to wave the white flag. We're going to pick every conference championship game, go through them quickly, and then pick Arizona and Auburn on Saturday night. I know you want to gloat, so
I just want to reiterate here what happened here, okay? Because you get basically 1 point for most picks that we make, but you get 2 points if you nail your upset special, and 2 points if you get the Arizona game right with the spread. You got both of those right, and I got both those wrong. So that's 4 points for you right there. Yeah. And you still managed to lose ground on me. That's how bad you were at picking the other games. I just want that to be known.
It's known. It's not good. Nonetheless, heck of a job to you. Let's pick them all. I'm probably not going to catch you, but we'll pick our share of bowl games and stuff. All right, so Sun Belt, James Madison's a 22.5-point favorite against Troy. We're not going to say a lot about that. We are both going to take James Madison and their coach Bob Chesney, who's going to UCLA. I think they will. We'll find out if they make the playoff. We'll talk about that here shortly. Conference USA, Kennesaw State is -1.5 at Jacksonville State. I don't think either of us have much to add. I'm taking Kennesaw. You're taking Jacksonville. Kennesaw is on the road, lost to Jacksonville by 9 the other week. I think they get some revenge. We're both taking Tulane at home as a 2.5-point underdog in the American Championship game. Mountain West, Boise State is a 3.5-point favorite. You're taking them over UNLV. I'm taking UNLV. I think they lose by 3. The thing about the Mountain West game, Shane, I don't think that either of the, well, especially Boise State didn't belong. It's just they had a convoluted tiebreaker.
It's so
And how
bad.
about New Mexico? That was, if you're a New Mexico fan, that was really, really disappointing to
Yeah.
see them not get a shot here.
There's got to be a better tiebreaker system than this. If nothing else, put into the divisions again, because this is ridiculous. You got, two in so many conferences now. They're so big that, two teams you're comparing them head to head. You really can't because they don't play any of the same teams or not many of the same teams at all. And you're just going by this computer analytics. This has got to stop. If you're going to keep consolidating conferences, you got to come up with a better way to reward teams that deserve to be in, and that includes the ACC.
Yeah, and we'll get to them here momentarily. All right, running through the rest of them. The MAC, Miami of Ohio, is a 2.5-point underdog against Western Michigan. We're taking Western Michigan. The Big 12, BYU is a 13.5-point dog against Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech will win. But BYU, now that their coach Kalani Sitake turned down Penn State to stay, Shane, do you think they can win the game outright?
I think they can. I don't think they're going to. I think it's going to be a better game than we saw in Lubbock. But I think maybe a 7 to 10 point game. I don't think BYU is going to go quietly. But Tech is they're just better, especially on defense. I don't think they're going to get enough. But it would be funny though if BYU is left out and Tulane gets in, Jake Retzloff gets into the college football playoff, and BYU doesn't after winning 11 games.
That'd be hilarious.
That'd be something.
We both are taking Georgia minus 2.5 against Alabama in the SEC championship game. Alabama's won 10 of the last 11 meetings. I don't like them there. Duke and Virginia. This is an interesting game. Virginia minus 3.5 against Duke. Virginia just beat them by 17 the other week. Now, if Duke wins, we could have two group of 5 teams make it in. James Madison, if they were to win over Troy, and then the winner of the North Texas Tulane game. What a disaster. You are going Duke to cover the line. Do you think they'll win the game?
I don't know. I kind of, as ridiculous as it is that they're in this game because they're 7-5 on the season. I feel like the ACC should just say, screw the analytics. We're just going to say Duke can't be in this game because they went 7-5. With that said, I'm kind of all for the chaos. I think Virginia probably wins, but Duke certainly could. And I'd love to, a scenario where the ACC doesn't get any teams in and you get two group of 5 teams in would be phenomenal. Arizona's on the outside looking in, so I really don't care.
Ohio State minus 5.5 is my lock of the weekend against Indiana. You are going to play it as well. I am not buying Indiana against the Buckeyes, who look to be, as of right now, unbeatable.
On defense, I think they'll shut down Indiana. I think it's gonna be a close game. I don't think the line is that far off, but I think Ohio State wins by a touchdown.
Ohio State by 2 touchdowns. At least. Okay. And then let's pick Auburn, Arizona basketball. What is it? Saturday night, late game. What is it? 8:30 start? Is that right, Shane? Yeah, 8 o'clock start.
10:30 Auburn time, I think. Or is Alabama 1 hour or 2 hours behind?
I think they're
maybe 1 hour. Okay.
But Auburn is let's see. It is, I don't know why I'm looking this up, but they are 1 hour. So it's a 9 o'clock Auburn start in Auburn. No, it says 8 o'clock.
Okay, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Okay. Yeah, you threw me off.
All right, so here we go. Arizona, 8 o'clock, Saturday night against Auburn. Now, listen, I haven't watched a lot of Auburn, but they're a good team. They're still ranked in the top 25. This is a game that Arizona, even without Karchenkov, should take care of business. I think the home crowd will spur Arizona late, and the Wildcats win by double digits on Saturday night. I'm going to say 10 plus in this contest.
I think it's going to be closer. I'm going to take Arizona to win. I think Auburn maybe makes a push early in the game before Arizona gets its footing. It's a big game and a big atmosphere. But Auburn's had so much upheaval, both in terms of their players and their coaching. I think they're still trying to get their footing. They did have a nice win over St. John's last week, but St. John's is also kind of struggling right now. So I think maybe this game, if like I mentioned with Bruce, I think if Tommy Lloyd can go with just 7 players, assuming Karchenkov doesn't play, I think he'll probably do that if he can. I think, and maybe a / hope, that this is sort of Braden Berry's coming out party. He's had some good games against some of the lesser quality opponents, but I think maybe this is a game where he finally comes out and has like a 20-point game against a good team, avoids the early foul trouble, shows what he can do. Jaden Bradley, Koa-Pete take over late. Krivas and Awaka do enough on the glass, and Arizona wins. I'm going to say by 6 points. It's not as comfortable as you think it might be.
We will see what the line is. I would say the line will be probably in between our two numbers. I would say between 6 and 8 would be my guess for Saturday. So it should be a fun game. I'll tell you what, Shane, we've said it, and you said it at the outset of the show. You celebrate these times. The basketball team is undefeated and ranked number 2. The football team just has won 5 in a row in November, is 9-3, and is going to be in a marquee bowl game and is ranked 18th in the penultimate college football playoff standings. Unbelievable. Great job, Brent Brennan. Hope those extensions and those raises come soon. Who knows what future seasons are going to look like? Enjoy the present. And Brent Brennan, Blair Willis pointed out a tweet where I put it out last year, and I said, I don't think Brent Brennan's the guy. I was wrong.
And you were the only one who thought that, Eric.
Well, I probably wasn't. In fact, I know I wasn't.
No, you weren't. Not at
But
all.
you know what? I'll own it. Good job, Coach. You and your staff proved me wrong. Way to go. Good job.
Well, and as his brother told us last week, everyone who doubted him can F off.
That's me. All right. Great show. Thanks to Bruce Pasco. Thanks to Victor Yates. And as always, thanks to Shane Dale. I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.